I stared at Connor Whitman across his sleek glass desk, keeping my expression neutral as he delivered the news with a smugness he didn't bother to hide. His words floated between us like smoke. We're restructuring the division, and unfortunately, your role will be eliminated at the end of next month. I see, I said quietly, watching the corners of his mouth twitch upward. But before you go, he added, reclining in his ergonomic chair, I need you to train your replacement. Madison starts tomorrow. I expect you to walk her through everything, how you manage our entire communications strategy. Our communications strategy. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. My name is Valerie Kim. I'm 44 years old, and for the past 11 years, I've been the director of communications at Whitman Global Logistics, or so Connor believed. The truth was far more layered than he could imagine. Just 3 months ago, I finalized the quiet purchase of Whitman Global through a shell company I'd spent years building, VK Holdings, named after my own initials. Connor had no clue that the controlling stake in his company was now owned by the woman he was attempting to discard like outdated tech. Of course, I replied smoothly. I'll make sure Madison learns all the essentials. Connor gave an approving nod, clearly mistaking my calm for submission. I appreciate your professionalism. Most people get irrational when they're let go. I thought about the legal paperwork sitting with my attorney, documents set to transfer all executive authority to me starting tomorrow. Yes, I said, emotions can really get in the way of sound business decisions. As I walked back to my office, soon to be his former office, I reflected on my long journey here. I'd started at Whitman Global as a junior communications associate when the company was still helmed by Connor's father, Everett Whitman. Everett had believed in building from the ground up. He didn't care about where you came from, only where you were going. He mentored me, challenged me, and ultimately promoted me to lead the division. I still remembered what he told me the day I took the role, Valerie, real success isn't about power, it's about purpose. Build something that lasts. Then, 3 years ago, Everett died unexpectedly. Connor stepped in and immediately began tearing down everything his father built. He pushed out high-performing women, elevated drinking buddies to key roles, and turned the workplace into a revolving door of disillusioned talent. Innovation was out, ego was in. That's when I started buying stock. At first, it was just a few shares through my personal brokerage. But as Connor's blunders mounted and the board grew weary, more investors quietly sold off. I formed VK Holdings and began acquiring larger chunks. Stealthily. Strategically. Relentlessly. And now, Connor thought he was firing me. By tomorrow morning, he'd find out just how wrong he was. Just under the threshold that would require public disclosure. That's how we did it. 3 months ago, when one of the largest institutional investors decided to sell off their entire stake, I saw my opening. Through a carefully choreographed series of transactions led by my lawyer, James Chin, VK Holdings quietly acquired controlling interest in Whitman Global. And not once did Connor suspect a thing. Later that afternoon, Maya, my best friend and the company's head of HR, popped into my office. She was one of only 3 people who knew the truth about VK Holdings. Still no clue? She asked, arching an eyebrow as she leaned against the doorframe. I shook my head, shuffling through some onboarding materials. Not a single one. He's too busy patting himself on the back for poaching Madison from our so-called biggest competitor. Maya rolled her eyes. You mean the firm that's been bleeding clients for 2 years? The one that's under quiet investigation for cooking their books? The very same, I said, smirking. I thought about the folder of intel I had compiled, months of research on Madison and her sketchy career trajectory. Connor thought he was making a bold move. He had no idea he was playing right into mine. When are you telling him? Maya asked. Tomorrow morning. James will file the final paperwork at 9 a.m. sharp. Then we're calling an emergency board meeting. I paused, glancing at the photo on my desk, me and Everett Whitman at the company's 20th anniversary party. My throat tightened. It's time to put this company back on the path Everett intended. Maya stepped closer, her voice softer. He'd be proud of you, Val. You're not just saving his legacy, you're building your own. I felt a sting of emotion rise but pushed it down. There'd be time for that later. Right now, there was still work to do. The next morning, I arrived early. Madison was already in the lobby, dressed in a designer suit that practically screamed ambition. Her resume had looked solid at first glance, but I knew better. I had done my homework. Madison, I greeted her warmly. Welcome to Whitman Global. I'll be showing you around over the next few weeks. She smiled tightly, glancing me over like she was trying to figure out how much power I still had. That's very kind of you. Connor mentioned the changes he plans to make. Exciting times, right? I resisted the urge to laugh. Of course. Let's begin with our current communications strategy. I think you'll find it enlightening. Over the next 2 hours, I walked her through our campaigns, vendor contracts, internal workflows, and long-term messaging plans. She interrupted often, dropping buzzwords and making suggestions that revealed her complete misunderstanding of both our industry and our positioning. These client retention plans seem kind of outdated, she said, waving at one of my presentations. In my experience, aggressive acquisition always beats loyalty. If they're not growing fast, they're dying. I made a quiet note on my pad. Her arrogance only confirmed what my background check had already shown. She wasn't brought in to improve anything. She was brought in to replace me. But by 10 a.m., she was about to find out just how temporary her reign would be. My phone buzzed. A message from James, papers filed. Board members notified. Meeting set for 11. I looked up from my notebook and turned to Madison. I'm afraid we'll have to cut this morning's training short, I said, standing. An emergency board meeting just came up. Her brows furrowed. Board meeting? Connor didn't say anything about that. No, I replied, allowing myself a small, knowing smile. I don't suppose he did. I left her sitting in my office, still clutching a folder she clearly didn't understand, and made my way to the executive conference room. Connor was already there, pacing angrily with his phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean emergency board meeting? He snapped. I'm the CEO. I have to approve all board meetings. He turned as I entered, covering the phone's mic with his hand. Valerie, what are you doing here? This is for executive leadership only. I know, I said calmly, walking to the head of the table. That's exactly why I'm here. Before he could object, the other board members began arriving, some older faces I hadn't seen in years, veterans who had served under Everett Whitman and had been gradually edged out by Connor's regime. James Chin arrived last, carrying a thick leather folder. He gave me a subtle nod and took his seat. What is going on here? Connor barked, glancing around the room. I didn't authorize this meeting. I did, I said, rising to my feet. A hush fell over the room. James began distributing documents to each board member. 3 months ago, I began, my voice steady, VK Holdings began acquiring shares of Whitman Global. As of this morning, we've secured controlling interest. The acquisition is now complete and fully documented with the SEC. Connor's face turned from red to pale. VK Holdings, he stammered. That's my company. I mean, this is my company. You can't do this. It's not your company anymore, I said. VK stands for Valerie Kim. I watched as recognition spread across the faces in the room. Board members flipped through their packets. Murmurs grew louder. This is insane, Connor sputtered. You were the communications director. How could you possibly afford this? I thought about the years of preparation, the late nights reviewing shareholder reports, the quiet buying through proxies, the strategy that had led me here. Actually, Connor, I said, opening my own copy of the documents, I could. And I did. I placed a photo on the table, me and Everett Whitman, smiling at the company's 20th anniversary gala. This company was built on Everett's values, innovation, integrity, and respect. You dismantled all of that. It's time we return to those roots. Connor stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the tile. This is outrageous. I'll have my lawyers on this before the end of the day. There's no way this takeover holds up. James cleared his throat. I assure you, Mr. Whitman, he said smoothly, every step of this acquisition was done legally, transparently, and is fully backed by federal filings. We anticipated your response. Connor stared at him. Then at me. I simply folded my hands. This wasn't about revenge. This was about restoration. And today, it had officially begun. Perfectly legal, James said, adjusting his glasses. I personally oversaw every transaction. Would you like to see the documentation showing how VK Holdings acquired the shares? I watched as James methodically laid out the evidence, every stock purchase, every filing, every notarized legal document, clearly tracing VK Holdings' legitimate acquisition of Whitman Global Logistics. As you can see, James continued in his calm, professional tone, Valerie Kim now holds 51% of the company's shares. The board has been called today to vote on new executive leadership. Connor's face twisted into a sneer. You sneaky little. Choose your next words very carefully, I interrupted, my voice cool and level. The board is listening. And they were. Every board member sat upright, folders open, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Many had worked under Everett Whitman, and they had witnessed, helplessly, the decay that followed his death. I stood, my voice steady as I addressed them directly. Over the last 3 years, we've watched this company lose market share, top talent, and most of all, its soul. The culture Everett built was one of inclusion, innovation, and long-term vision. That has been stripped away piece by piece. I handed out another set of documents, performance metrics and comparative charts. Since Connor took over, profit margins have declined by 40%, 12 major clients have left, and employee turnover is at an all-time high. But this goes beyond numbers. We've lost who we are. Several board members nodded grimly as they flipped through the data. They didn't need convincing, they had lived this. This company wasn't just Everett's business, I continued. It was his legacy. He didn't build it to impress shareholders. He built it to create something that mattered, to everyone. Oh, spare us the emotional fluff, Connor snapped. Business is about profit, not your precious tribute to my father. Janet Chen, a long-standing board member, cleared her throat. Actually, Connor, business is about sustainable growth and principled leadership. 2 things we've seen far too little of during your tenure. Others began to nod in agreement. The shift in the room was palpable. I move to vote on new leadership, Janet said firmly. I second the motion, said another board member. Connor's eyes darted around the table, suddenly aware of how alone he was. You can't do this. I'm a Whitman, this is my company. No, I said quietly, holding his gaze. It was your father's company. And he understood what you never have, leadership isn't inherited. It's earned. The vote was swift. Within 15 minutes, Connor Whitman was officially removed as CEO of Whitman Global Logistics. Security was called to escort him from the building. As they approached, he shouted threats over his shoulder about lawyers, lawsuits, and revenge. His face was flushed with fury, but no one followed him. The room had already moved on. As the board members filed out, Janet paused and placed a hand on my shoulder. That couldn't have been easy, she said quietly. But it was absolutely necessary. I gave her a small nod, the weight of it all beginning to settle on my shoulders. Taking the company back had been hard. But rebuilding it, that would be the real work. And it started now. Then there was Madison. She had been brought in by Connor with one purpose, to replace me. But her employment contract had never been finalized. After a direct but courteous conversation where I expressed my concerns about her former employer's ethics and pending investigations, she chose to pursue other opportunities. I wished her luck, and that was the last we saw of her. The real work began soon after. Maya and I burned the midnight oil for weeks, combing through employee records, identifying the talent that had been ignored, overlooked, or silenced under Connor's leadership. "Look at this," Maya said one evening, tapping on a profile. "Thomas Nguyen, in logistics optimization. He's been passed over for promotion 3 times, even though he holds several patents and has glowing peer reviews." "Let's bring him in," I said without hesitation. "We need leaders who innovate, not just people who talk a big game." Bit by bit, we started reshaping the company. We reinstated the mentorship program Everett had introduced. We reopened the innovation lab that Connor had shuttered and gave it real funding. Most importantly, we began rebuilding the culture that once made Whitman Global feel like more than just a place to work. A month after the takeover, I sat in what used to be Connor's office, now completely redone, bright and functional, going over updates with Maya. "Employee satisfaction is up 30%, she said, smiling. "And we've had 3 former employees ask about rejoining." I smiled, too. The shift was tangible. The energy around the office felt different, lighter, more engaged. People spoke up. They took ownership. They believed again. But the path forward wasn't without resistance. Connor, as promised, had his legal team scrutinize every step of the takeover. They found nothing amiss, but the process was exhausting. Worse, he tried to stir up industry gossip, claiming the company was floundering under new, unstable leadership. We didn't argue with words, we answered with results. Within 6 months, Whitman Global wasn't just stable, it was growing. Our market position strengthened. Innovation that had once been stifled now flourished. We launched new products, signed new contracts, and began attracting talent again. 1 year after the takeover, I stood on stage at our annual company meeting. The auditorium was packed, standing room only. We'd hired over 100 new employees in the past year. When Everett Whitman founded this company, he envisioned more than just a profitable business. He wanted to build something meaningful, a place where innovation and integrity lived side by side. I looked out at the crowd, some familiar faces from Everett's era, others entirely new. But all of them were here with purpose. For a while, I continued, we lost our way. But today, we're back. Our profits are up 45% from last year. Our employee satisfaction has reached record highs. I gestured to the screen behind me, which displayed our latest initiative, a joint program between our logistics engineers and local high schools, bringing STEM education and mentorship to underserved communities. "This," I said, voice strong and clear, "is what success truly looks like. Not just numbers in a quarterly report, but real, lasting impact." The applause that followed wasn't just loud. It was heartfelt. And for the first time in years, it felt like Whitman Global had found its soul again. Then there was Madison. She had been brought in by Connor with one purpose, to replace me. But her employment contract had never been finalized. After a direct but courteous conversation where I expressed my concerns about her former employer's ethics and pending investigations, she chose to pursue other opportunities. I wished her luck, and that was the last we saw of her. The real work began soon after. Maya and I burned the midnight oil for weeks, combing through employee records, identifying the talent that had been ignored, overlooked, or silenced under Connor's leadership. "Look at this," Maya said one evening, tapping on a profile. "Thomas Nguyen, in logistics optimization. He's been passed over for promotion 3 times, even though he holds several patents and has glowing peer reviews." "Let's bring him in," I said without hesitation. We need leaders who innovate, not just people who talk a big game. Bit by bit, we started reshaping the company. We reinstated the mentorship program Everett had introduced. We reopened the innovation lab that Connor had shuttered and gave it real funding. Most importantly, we began rebuilding the culture that once made Whitman Global feel like more than just a place to work. A month after the takeover, I sat in what used to be Connor's office, now completely redone, bright and functional, going over updates with Maya. "Employee satisfaction is up 30%, she said, smiling. "And we've had 3 former employees ask about rejoining." I smiled, too. The shift was tangible. The energy around the office felt different, lighter, more engaged. People spoke up. They took ownership. They believed again. But the path forward wasn't without resistance. Connor, as promised, had his legal team scrutinize every step of the takeover. They found nothing amiss, but the process was exhausting. Worse, he tried to stir up industry gossip, claiming the company was floundering under new, unstable leadership. We didn't argue with words, we answered with results. Within 6 months, Whitman Global wasn't just stable, it was growing. Our market position strengthened. Innovation that had once been stifled now flourished. We launched new products, signed new contracts, and began attracting talent again. 1 year after the takeover, I stood on stage at our annual company meeting. The auditorium was packed, standing room only. We'd hired over 100 new employees in the past year. When Everett Whitman founded this company, he envisioned more than just a profitable business. He wanted to build something meaningful, a place where innovation and integrity lived side by side. I looked out at the crowd, some familiar faces from Everett's era, others entirely new. But all of them were here with purpose. For a while, I continued, we lost our way. But today, we're back. Our profits are up 45% from last year. Our employee satisfaction has reached record highs. I gestured to the screen behind me, which displayed our latest initiative, a joint program between our logistics engineers and local high schools, bringing STEM education and mentorship to underserved communities. This, I said, voice strong and clear, is what success truly looks like. Not just numbers in a quarterly report, but real, lasting impact. The applause that followed wasn't just loud. It was heartfelt. And for the first time in years, it felt like Whitman Global had found its soul again. Real lives. That's what this was always about. After the meeting, Maya found me in my office, where I was quietly staring at the old photo of Everett Whitman. He'd be proud, you know, she said gently. I nodded, brushing my fingers against the frame. I hope so. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, taking over the way I did. Valerie, Maya said, her voice firm, you didn't just take over. You saved this place. Look at what you've built. She was right. In the past year, we hadn't just restored what once was, we transformed it. Our technology was smarter. Our culture was stronger. And our impact reached farther than it ever had before. The photo on my desk used to be just Everett and me at that anniversary gala. But now, next to it, sat a new one, taken at our last company picnic. Hundreds of smiling faces, people from every department, laughing, building community. Each of them part of something bigger than themselves. That evening, as I packed up to leave, an unexpected email pinged in my inbox. It was from Everett's widow, Margaret. Subject, thank you. Dear Valerie. I've been watching what you've done with the company this past year. Everett always said you were special, that you truly understood what Whitman Global was meant to be. He was right. Thank you for honoring his dream, and for making it even better. With gratitude. Margaret. Tears stung my eyes as I read her message. This was why I did it. Not for revenge. Not for control. But because some dreams are worth protecting. Some values are worth the fight. The next morning, I arrived early, like I always did. The building was still and quiet, but not for long. Soon, it would hum with energy, with fresh ideas and bold ambition. On my way to my office, I passed the wall where Everett's motto still hung. Success isn't just about making money, it's about building something that matters. I smiled. Mark had believed he was pushing me out, forcing me to train a replacement, to bow out quietly. Instead, he pushed me into something greater. Into my purpose. I wasn't just a communications executive anymore. I was a leader. A builder. A visionary. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's proving you were right from the beginning, that integrity, innovation, and respect aren't just slogans. They're principles. And when you fight for them, they change everything. As the doors opened and the office filled with familiar voices and new ideas, I looked around and felt it in my bones. This was Everett Whitman's real legacy, not just a company, but a space where people could thrive. And now, it was mine too. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Truly. It's been a journey, one filled with quiet nights of doubt, long days of work, and moments where I wasn't sure if standing up for what mattered would cost me everything. But I'm here now, not just standing, but leading. And I wouldn't change a thing. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had to fight quietly, patiently, for something you believed in? Drop a comment below, share your story, your advice, your strength. Let's make this a space where people like us, who lead with purpose, not ego, can be seen and heard. And if I could leave you with one piece of advice, it's this: don't wait for someone to hand you permission to lead. You don't need a title, a corner office, or anyone's approval to start making change. What you do need is a clear sense of your values and the courage to act on them, especially when it's hard, especially when people doubt you. Because sometimes, the best way to respond to betrayal or being underestimated isn't to lash out. It's to rise up. To build something better. To become the kind of leader you once wished you had. If my story inspired you, encouraged you, or reminded you of your own power, I'd be honored if you liked the video, subscribed for more, and most of all, shared your thoughts. Your voice matters here. This isn't just my story, it could be yours too. And if you're still wondering whether you're strong enough, smart enough, or ready enough, you are. Let's build something that matters, together.